Hi everyone, I'm Andrei Boyagi and I'm joined today by Andrei Bocan, and today we're going to share with you Atlassian's secret to mastering complexity in software delivery with platform engineering and Compass. Let's start with the ultimate goal for software delivery teams. Deliver high quality software fast. Take a look at your CIO or CTO, listen to them speak, listen to their vision statement. Chances are they're chasing some version of this goal. And whilst it's a common goal, there's a massive variance or a big spectrum of companies who manage to achieve this and those who don't. But what's driving this massive diversity in performance? Some companies are able to drop new code into production with mind-boggling frequency and very few customer impacting incidents, whilst others struggle with quarterly releases that are full of bugs and customer impacting problems. So the same technologies and resourcing is available to all companies. So why is there such a massive diversity in outcome? Let's answer that question with a game. This is stage one of a memory game. I'm going to show you some information on the screen. I want you to try and remember as much as you can. All right. Slide one. Who? We've got Batman. What does Batman do? He's a superhero. Where does Batman live? Gotham. Try and remember. We've got Andrei Bocan, my co-presenter. Andrei is a principal engineer and he lives in San Francisco. MCB, Mike Cannon-Brookes. He's the co-CEO of Atlassian and he lives in Sydney. All right. Question one of stage one. Where does Batman live? Perfect. Easy, right? Who thinks they've got a good memory? Hands up. Oh, only 2 people, or 4, 5. All right, good. This is going to go well then. All right, stage two. Let's add some more data and see if it gets a little more challenging. We've got Spider-Man. Spider-Man's a student and he lives in Queens. We've got Buzz Lightyear, toy, lives at Andy's house. We've got Grogu. Anyone watch Mandalorian? There we go. We don't really know what Grogu does. If you do know, don't tell me because I'm not up to date. Doesn't really live anywhere, but they fly around in the Razor Crest. Sorry? Not anymore. Oh, thanks a lot. We've got Mickey. Mickey's a wizard, and he lives in Disneyland, I think. All right, question 2. What color was the symbol on Mike Cannon-Brookes' hat? The people who had good memories, where are you? Blue? Any other guesses? White? Purple? It was black. South Sydney Rabbitohs symbol. All right. Final stage. People with the good memories, pay attention. I'm not going to read it out. Let's try and remember that. Last one. Ready for the stage 3 question? Doesn't sound like it. All right. All the confidence just dropped in the room. Which 2 fictional characters appeared in another person's row? Any guesses? Oh, all broken now. Grogu appeared twice. It's not Yoda for anyone who doesn't know. Different person, character. And Mickey actually appeared twice. Oh, you think it's not fair, right? You think it's not fair. It's such a small detail. I showed MCB's row 2 times, or 3 times, including now, okay? And you might think it's not fair because the detail is so small, but it's the same for software teams. You like that transition, by the way? It's the same for software teams. They don't know what they need to remember or when they're going to need that information. But I want you to think about that feeling you got when I showed those numbers. And I could see it on all your faces. I tried this out with a whole bunch of different people over the last few weeks. And I got a range of responses. The first one was the best though. The first person said, "You broke my brain," when you saw that. The next person said, "My brain gave up. I just knew I wasn't gonna be able to remember it, so I didn't even bother." And the last person, it was a dear colleague of mine actually, who told me yesterday, I started to feel anxious because I knew I wasn't gonna be able to remember and you were gonna ask me something about it. And so it's a range of emotions that people get when they see that. And even though software teams don't need to remember characters, what they do, where they live, they do have a lot that they need to remember, and it's a lot of bunch of little details. And that uncomfortable feeling that you got when you saw those numbers, that's what it feels for a team who's under significant cognitive load. They feel like that all the time. When there's too much for us to remember and we can't calculate impacts or outcomes from the things that we're doing, we say that that thing is starting to be complex. And complexity in software delivery is a difference between delivering high quality software fast and not. The more complexity that a software team has to deal with, the harder it is for them to deliver high quality software fast, and the less engaged they are with their work. The introduction of microservices at Atlassian is actually a really good example of what happens when you introduce complexity into an environment. So at the beginning of the microservices journey, the first few teams started creating microservices and everything was great. The teams were delivering high quality software fast. Think of this like stage one of the memory game. You didn't have that much to remember. Everyone knows who Batman, Mike Cannon-Brooks, Andrei's right up here. So it's easy to remember things. At this stage, teams were working autonomously and they had very few dependencies. Everyone was really engaged and complexity was really low. And as more and more of the organization starts to adopt a microservices architecture, complexity starts to increase. This is like stage two of the memory game. It's not that hard. Your brains weren't broken yet, but things were starting to get more difficult to remember. And at this stage, software sprawl starts to become a challenge for software teams. So the number of microservices are growing. The number of teams you need to interact with are growing. There's more dependencies that you have to start to deal with. And things start moving faster and faster, and teams start to lose track of what's happening in the environment. So as complexity starts to increase, we start to see a leveling of team performance, and there's a drop not only in developer satisfaction, but in team satisfaction across all role profiles. Eventually, the organization reaches its complexity limit. Now, you can think of the complexity limit as the amount of complexity each team has to navigate when they're interfacing with the rest of the organization. The complexity is driven, as I said before, by an increased surface area. So the number of dependencies, teams, processes to navigate, and no longer being able to calculate the outcomes of the work that you're doing. So this is like stage 3 of the memory game, where your brain gives up and you just know that you're not going to be able to do what you need to do. So this is how it feels for software teams when they hit that complexity limit. That feeling that you had, like, oh no, he's going to ask me a question about this, I'm not going to remember it. That's that feeling that software teams feel when you hit the complexity limit. So what do companies do when this happens? Simplification project time. Now, simplification is a losing strategy for 2 reasons. Number 1, complexity grows faster than you can simplify. The second one is these simplification projects operate in the same complex environment that they're trying to simplify. So let's bring it to life a little bit. If anyone's been in one of these projects, and I have, the first thing that you're asked to do is either decommission or consolidate software wherever you can. I know some of you are nodding and you're laughing, so you already know where I'm going. To do this, you need to understand all the dependencies for that software. Who's using it? What are you going to do with the data that's there? You're going to archive it? Are you going to migrate it? There's a lot of work. And to do all of that in a complex environment takes a long time. So in the 12 or 18 months, and I know that sounds a long time, but realistically, that's what it is. In the 12 to 18 months it takes you to do all that, engineers have probably spun out hundreds, if not thousands more services in that time. So what have you really achieved by trying to simplify? That's right, nothing. And complexity is not always a bad thing. The complexity that microservices introduces helps us build resilient systems, systems that scale and systems that we can change quickly. So complexity is not always bad. So what do we do? Instead of trying to reduce complexity, what if we increase the amount of complexity each team can navigate before it starts to impact the speed and quality at which they produce software and their satisfaction with their work? Within Atlassian, we use our developer experience platform, Compass, to lift the complexity limit of our software teams. So within Atlassian, we have almost 18,000 software components. We have thousands of staff. If we didn't do anything, the complexity limit would have been reached thousands of components and staff ago. Lifting the complexity limit means we're able to increase the amount of complexity each team can navigate before it starts to impact job satisfaction and the speed and quality at which they produce software. But how does it actually, I know you're asking yourself, how does it actually lift the complexity limit? So Compass actually reduces that cognitive load for software teams, that feeling that you had when you saw those numbers. This means they no longer need to remember who does what, where to find things. Compass has a component catalog that lays all that out for them in a standard way. Teams also know what they need to do up front. We've got scorecards in Compass that show teams what they need to do and allows them to track their progress towards those expectations during their delivery cycle and not at the end. Teams can also get the information that they need on demand. So what this means is there's less waiting time between teams. So when teams engage each other, it's not low value. They engage each other with an established context, so they already are on the same page. Now, I could sit here and keep going on about how Compass helps software teams, but instead of doing that, I thought I'd ask Andrei Bocan. So as I said earlier, Andrei is a principal engineer at Atlassian, and I thought I'd invite Andrei up to share how Compass has increased the complexity limit for his team. Andrei?
Thank you. All right, so complex systems don't start out as complex. They start out as a single new service. And that single new service only does one thing. Now, over time, features get added, specifications change, and that one new service doesn't do one thing anymore. It does more things, and then more, until at some point, it's doing too many things. And that's where engineering teams will usually take a look at that service and decide that it needs to get decomposed into multiple new services that only do one thing. And so you play this back a couple of times, and you scale it to the whole organization, and you can see how we very quickly get to stage 2 and then stage 3 of Andrew's memory game. And that's where teams usually feel the need to track their software components. With a single code base, all the information you need in order to figure out what a specific module does, who owns it, and what changes have been made to it is in one place. In our brave new decomposed world, getting that information means switching between a half a dozen tools and about as many search paradigms. With the Compass catalog, we thought we'd try to simplify that. Compass is meant to be the place where your organization tracks all of your software components. As an engineer, this screen alone makes a massive difference in my quality of life and significantly lowers my cognitive load. At one glance, I can see what this service does, who owns it, how to contact them, whether the service is active or not, whether the service has been deployed recently, and how to find its repositories. Best of all, it all gets surfaced in one consistent search interface. Now, creating a new service makes it easy for engineering teams to inadvertently add unnecessary complexity to their systems. This is done either by using unsupported tooling or simply not reusing existing functionality developed elsewhere in the organization. So that makes teams end up to manage even more incidental complexity to the detriment of delivering business value. We developed component templates in order to help organizations surface existing best practices and help engineering teams get better leverage from existing work. Just like other types of components you might track in Compass, you can attach ownership and various metadata to component templates, and they get surfaced using the same consistent search UI that other components use. The difference is that component templates, as the name might suggest, can be used as the basis for other components. So for instance, when engineers on my team want to spin up a new service, they're able to use our component template in order to be up and running with a component that bakes in our best practices and tooling in just a few clicks. Once the service has been created, Compass scorecards can help guide engineers through the rest of the process of taking that service to production. Scorecards are featured prominently on the component overview page, and this helps engineers get a better handle on what work needs to be done in order for them to meet our internal standards. So we touched on governance for a bit, so let's go through an example. In prior organizations, the thing that I always struggled with and used to take up a lot of my time was doing disaster recovery planning. Now, this sounds official and imposing, but my end of it entailed simply getting a list of all of the components in the organization, their owners, and a link to their disaster recovery plans. So naturally, the place where I'd start was a spreadsheet. And after a couple of days, I'd have the components and their owners and a means to contact them. So I'd start sending out emails asking each and every one of the component owners to please send me a link to their disaster recovery plans. Now, I learned a couple of things going through this process. The first one was that people are very good at ignoring junk email. The second one, unfortunately, was that my emails looked a lot like junk emails. So I'd usually need to fall back on pinging people over direct messages, and this would be over HipChat or IRC. So this was a while back. And not even that was foolproof. So my fallback was usually grabbing my laptop and physically walking to some of my service owners and asking them to please give me a link to their disaster recovery plans. Now, this was a great way to meet people in my organization, but a fairly time-consuming way to do any sort of governance work. Excuse me. So let's see what this looks like with Compass. Each scorecard in Compass is made up of several criteria. Each criteria has a specific weight meant to represent the importance of that policy for your organization. So in this case, we could use one of our readiness scorecards, and the platform team who is in charge of setting these policies can simply add a criterion that states that all services need to provide a link to their disaster recovery documentation. As the owners of several services, my team would notice this new criterion show up on both the component overview page as well as during checkops. Now, checkops is a practice that we encourage every team to run every single week in order to get a better handle on their engineering health and prioritize work that needs to be done that would have otherwise gone unnoticed. So for my team, part of that process is reviewing the activity as well as the scorecard attainment levels for every one of the components that we own. So every week, this criterion would end up nagging us until, finally, we would relent and add our disaster recovery documentation. Now, part of me still misses that disaster recovery planning spreadsheet, and fortunately, I can use Scorecard's reporting feature to get a similar experience. I can see the completion rate for that scorecard for each component, and then any components that might be struggling, as well as dig into detail and surface the specific criterion attainment levels. As you can tell, the scorecard flow makes things significantly easier and reduces the cognitive load on both platform teams and engineering teams. For platform teams, applying new governance criteria and getting compliance information goes from a week-long ordeal to a couple of clicks. And for engineering teams, the work that they need to do in order to keep their services compliant and up to date with organizational standards is always visible. Now, we talked a bit about disaster recovery, so it's only fair to talk about incidents. Having been on call for about a dozen years now, I took breaks, don't worry. Compass has transformed that experience for me. Let me explain why. Incidents never happen at a convenient time. You know what they say, it's always 3 a.m. somewhere. You'd usually need to spend a bit of time after getting paged in order to get your bearings and figure out what context you need in order to better resolve the incident. The less time that you can spend here, the faster that you can get your incident sorted. Now, before Compass, what this would mean is that I'd wake up, go to my alerting tool. From my alerting tool, get a link to the monitoring tool, see what monitor had failed, then try to find a dashboard that would surface any systemic failures that that monitor might have caused. Then go to my logging tool. From my logging tool, see if I could find an error that would then help me find the appropriate runbook, which would hopefully tell me what the failing service was, and then I'd be able to find out who the service owner was, page them, and when they respond to the page, ask them the most important question during an incident. What changed? With Compass, I can just start from what changed. From the activity timeline, I have easy access to any recently deployed changes, feature flag toggles, or incidents for my components or the components that my components depend on. If I need more detail, I can just click on one of these events and be taken to the tool where it originated from. We're constantly adding support for new event types and new tools. And given that this feature is powered by Atlassian's app development platform, Forge, it's easy for third parties to add their support for their own tools on their own. This shortcuts the first 30 minutes of investigation in any incident and helps decrease time to recovery. Once I've identified the changes that might have caused the incident, the component overview page will help me get to any runbooks, documentation, dashboards, or logs that I might need in order to resolve the incident. And if I need to page the owners of another service, that information is right there at the top of the component overview page. You can see how all of these features interact to decrease cognitive load for engineering teams who are on call for multiple services. They no longer need to, they no longer need to remember complicated dependency graphs or track any ownership changes in activity across disparate tools. It's all in Compass, which frees up bandwidth for your teams to focus on the things that really matter. So all this hopefully helps give you a clearer picture of how Compass helps teams lift the complexity limit. The catalog makes it easy to access all the information about your software components whenever you need it. With scorecards and checkups, teams are able to prioritize the work that needs to be done in order to ensure that they can keep building quality software at speed. Templates help accelerate teams when building new services and help focus your organization's technical investment. And with Ecosystem, you're able to tie information from all of your tools back to your software components. All right, that's it for me. If you want to talk to me, just come grab me after the session or swing by the Compass booth, and I'll be happy to chat. With that being said, I'll pass it over to Andrei.
Thanks, Andrei. Let's give Andrei a clap. Well done. All right, so we've heard about how Compass can help teams lift the complexity limit, helping to make them happier and to deliver high-quality software fast. It's a privilege to be joined by Clements, Ryan, and Priti Kota for a panel discussion on complexity and the value of developer experience platforms like Compass. Let's welcome them to the stage. All right, so Clements, it'd be great if you could give a little bit of background about yourself.
So yeah, I work for Capgemini Society. I'm a cloud and DevOps CTO. We are helping many customers to move to cloud, modernize their application platform. And then you need to think about enterprises with 400 teams or something like that. So that's my role.
Thanks, Clements. And Priti, can you share some background?
Hey, everyone. It's really nice to be here in person at a conference and see so many of you in person. So I'm Priti. I'm the head of engineering for Compass at Atlassian. I have about 20 years of experience in engineering across a breadth of roles. And I think it's really fun to be working on a product like Compass, which I know is built to make the lives of people like me better. So it doesn't get better than that.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you both. And it's great because you both bring a different perspective to this discussion. So Clements, obviously, you bring like an enterprise or CIO, CTO perspective, and Priti, you bring an awesome engineering perspective to the discussion. So Clements, I'll start with you with a question. You support many enterprises looking to build a capability and look to move to cloud native. What's the most common concerns and challenges you see from enterprises trying to do this?
So yeah, and that's our discussions I have a lot with customers. The top challenges of CIOs is definitely that they don't see any benefits of moving to a cloud-native architecture, to move to a microservices architecture. And that's often due to the business, I think, that the business is not involved in the whole move to cloud and the whole microservices strategy. IT, it's often a play from IT departments to build that cloud-native platform, and then starting to build up all the needs around compliancy and security in that one platform. And then they go to the business saying, hey, we have a nice platform, now move your business functionality on top of it. But then the business says, yeah, I don't see the business case here. I don't want to go there. So that's one challenge of a CIO. The other challenge is definitely technical debt. So adoption of cloud native sometimes starts with just one app, one team, 2 teams, 3 teams. And actually you saw the graph, what you were showing with the 3 stages. Then it ends up with 10 applications because either the knowledge is missing, they don't see the benefits of it. And that whole application modernization starts to stall from there. So 2 things. One, technical debt, don't see the benefits from it, and not having the business on board there.
Yeah, interesting. And Priti, you've been on this journey a few times now, on the microservices journey. From an engineering perspective, excuse me, what are the challenges that you've encountered?
Yeah. Look, loosely coupled architectures, they're great. We know a lot of the benefits that come with it. But it's both a blessing and a curse. And through my experience, what I've found is I can categorize them into 2 broad spectrum challenges, right? The first one is absolutely the complexity limit. I mean, just think about how your dependency graph just explodes once you get into microservices, right? And soon what you start seeing is that toil and that overhead that comes with having so many services. It doesn't matter whether you're starting something from scratch or like Andrei talked about during incident management, just having to find the right information is just so critical. And that's where you see a lot of challenges. Often what you'll see is you have a sprint and you're doing a retro and you're like, okay, so why did this thing take so long? And when you dig into it, if you're crossing organizational boundaries to find information, that can be a huge bottleneck. And then you have things like observability. How do you make sure that you have a consistent way to trace things across your stack, right? So you can just see that it's good evidence for the complexity limit that you talked about, Andrew. And the second thing that I see is this whole tug between consistency and autonomy, right? So with microservices, the great thing is you have so much power to choose the right tech stack, choose the right storage layer. It's really empowering for an engineering team. As an engineer, I love it. But consistency is also important, right? You can't have every team choosing their own security standards or reliability standards, and that's where it gets challenging. Yeah. So those are some of the things that I've seen.
Yeah, and I think you raise a good point in the retros when you're trying to see what could have been better.
Right.
I've actually seen teams' faces broken like we described before, so
yeah.
Very clear sign of the complexity.
I actually have been with customers who adopted DevOps and Agile, and they were thinking, okay, let's give our teams the complete freedom for everything.
Yeah.
And they ended up with a whole shebang of testing frameworks, about DevOps tools. They adopted everything. You can imagine that slowed them down a lot. Yep. Now we are moving to standardize them and indeed going to the consistent way of working.
So if they do want to reap those benefits, Clements, that we spoke about, or Priti spoke about with microservices architecture, how do they overcome some of the challenges you mentioned earlier?
So there are several things what organizations, what enterprises are doing to overcome those kinds of challenges with enterprises when to get the benefits of moving to cloud native there. One is definitely get the business on board. It is not a IT play. I love, and that's not what the talk is about, Align, Jira Align, because then you have the complete flow of business value from the business level till the DevOps teams which are working on that value. That's one, get the business on board. The second one is security and compliance on board. Because often when you do an app modernization or a complete application landscape modernization, they don't know what is the impact of cloud native. And probably they will end up being the blocker saying, hey, fine that you are deploying, I think it was 29 times a week. I remember that one. And they will say, okay, our window is once every 3 months. And they don't understand. So get compliance and security on board. And that's also why I love the scorecard so much. We are using scorecards already for a while. For example, the OpenSSF scorecard, which validates how an open source team is using the best practices, actually. They are using a branching structure? How are doing their versioning? Do they have more as 2 maintainers on the team? And all those kinds of aspects. You are validating of every project if they are following the right ways of working. That's why you see that organizations are starting to define policies. And policies are let's say, a problem for DevOps teams because they are limiting what the DevOps teams can do there. And when you are defining too much policies, we are developers, we will find a workaround. I always explain it as proactive and reactive policies. So proactive policies, you define only these people are allowed to access the DevOps tools or allowed to access this environment or allowed to do an approval there. From the reactive policies, it's actually what you saw in the scorecards. Hey, we love that you follow it, but you need to be a little bit better, and you can skip some when needed, but try to be better. That's the way how we are looking at it. So policies is definitely an important part there. Then I also see a lot of organizations are adopting the COE, and we call it the Cloud Center of Enablement, not the Cloud Center of Excellence, because the excellence should be in the teams and not in the center there, where they are helping teams to work in a consistent way. We create libraries like infrastructure as code templates, pipelines as code templates, policies as code templates, that they all can start using that in a consistent way. You can imagine where you can show that up into Compass, saying, hey, this is the library you can rely on, and then start using it from there. You can see the maturity of that library, and every team is happy consuming that one. We are all doing that in an inner source way of working, also to enable the teams, to give the freedom to the teams to adopt those kinds of policies. And that works quite nicely, actually, because when they are, developers, when they are can influence a certain decision or a certain policy, they are much more likely to follow it. And they are happy doing that. So inner source is a big play there. The last one, it should be quite obvious, the architecture should stay flexible. You were talking about the dependency hell. We all have been there. It will increase definitely when you go microservices. Okay. So take care that your architecture is very visible, very understandable, and work around that. So those were my ideas, or thoughts, what enterprises are using to overcome it, actually. Yeah?
I love that you're trying to find a balance between what the organization needs and what teams need, because quite often they're very different. So the organization likes having standardization, templates, consistency. Teams like freedom, they want to do things their way. So I'm actually loving having you both on the stage at the same time.
But also, so when you have an enterprise with 400 teams,
yeah,
not all are at the same level.
Correct.
Some have a slightly different way of operating, their DevOps way of working, due to maybe they have a legacy code that they need to maintain, which is not able to deploy 29 times a week. So that's what you need to balance out, actually, there.
Yeah, for sure. In large teams, there's no way it's a one-size-fits-all in a large organization. So Priti, how have you seen, or how do you overcome these challenges? How do you make sure that teams who are on that journey don't hit that complexity limit?
So the good news is everything that you said, Clements, resonates so well with me.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to piggyback off of what you said,
Okay.
right? So consistency, autonomy, and let's add a third one, flexibility, right? To your point, any developer experience portal or platform needs to be flexible to support varying needs across diverse teams. And what I've found is that the best way for you to have governance or your platform teams set this up is to make it easy for engineering teams to be compliant, to stay on top of things. You make it easy, the barrier to entry into keeping things up is so much easier. So consistency, Andrei talked about templates. That goes such a long way in helping make sure that your teams are using these standardized sets of libraries and policies and so on. So that's like the heart of engineering, right? You want to make it easy for all your development teams to do this. The flip side of it is reporting. You want to know how you're doing when it comes to consistency, compliance, and making sure that your teams are adhering to these standards. So I love one of Atlassian's practices that we have is we have an amazing platform engineering team. Our platform engineering level is pretty mature. And we have a security team there, and they have created a trust scorecard for every single product. As an engineering leader, I am actionable, and it's my responsibility to make sure that the scorecard stays high. So it has a rich set of evolving criteria. They are the subject matter experts. They go figure out what it means to stay secure, and I know what I need to do to stay compliant, and I know if something drops, I know right away. So that's the reactive part of it. Yep. The proactive part is enabling us to adhere to these security standards with templates. Yep. So I think that's the best of both worlds, right? And if you talk about autonomy, this is great. We have like a standardized set of metrics and policies across our teams. But I'll give you an example. So one of my teams, we wanted to make sure that our dev loop is super optimized. And one metric that we want to track right now is test execution time. This is important to my team right now. A different team might have a different problem that they are looking at. So with Compass, what you can do is it's just so flexible. You can start pushing your test execution time metrics, create a scorecard. So using the same platform, you get both consistency, autonomy, you get data that's aggregated from a diverse set of tools, single pane of glass. It just makes it so much easier. And of course, reducing toil, that centralized catalog, I can't emphasize how critical that is, and we've seen it within Atlassian. It's been really crucial for our day-to-day lives even.
So indeed, we are always saying it should be easy to do it the right way.
Yes, exactly.
And that's what we are putting into all our practices, into all our ways of working, so that the teams themselves can focus on the business functionality. And that's where you want to go towards too.
I've never seen such alignment between an engineering team and I was hoping for a bit of fireworks, but we didn't get it. So it sounds like developer experience platforms are key to helping teams navigate that complexity and continue to or start to deliver high quality software fast in a complex environment. There's been a lot of hype about platform engineering, and it's a really common theme. So I'd love to hear from you both. Maybe we'll start with Clements. What's your predictions for platform engineering and developer experience platforms like Compass in the next 12 to 18 months?
So yeah, it should be easy to do it the right way. That comes immediately to my mind. You want to automate everything away what distracts the team. So the templates is a very good example, but also your DevOps platforms, your CI/CD pipelines, everything actually what a team uses to deliver the business functionality, that's what you see disappearing actually in such a platform. I think, for example, CI/CD pipeline setup and all those kinds of stuff, that will also be templatized. And I think the platform where you create a new service, they already know what you're going to build. So they are saying, okay, this is the best way to deploy this service. And so there will be a lot of intelligence in the platform. I don't want to reflect on the keynote yesterday with the ChatGPT examples. I think there's, in 12 months, the discussion about intellectual property is not done yet. So I don't think that will be there at that moment, but the platforms will become much more intelligent in supporting your DevOps teams to deliver the business functionality. Security, compliancy, built-in, so that it's all visible, all very easy adjustable for those teams. And it will not only be or nice software engineering capabilities, which you will see disappear in the platform, but also low-code, no-code. That's where I see also a lot of need around these kinds of IDs and metrics where, how do we call them? Citizen developers are supported by the platform to do it the right way. So platforms, DevOps platform, the cloud platform, and low-code, no-code platforms with a lot of intelligence and support around security and compliance.
Love that. So ChatGPT also have a job in 12 months, you think?
Yeah.
My job, yeah. Thanks, Clements. Priti?
You said it really well, Clements. I think this is a really exciting time for platform engineering, right? I think it's going to become a norm. I think we're going to see more of these standardized practices come up. I do think, just like we saw with the DevOps transformation, we are going to learn from each other. It's really important to have that community support around it and just make this better for all of us. I do think developer experience platforms are just going to become indispensable. We're all distributed, our systems are distributed. We really need an effective way to bring teams together when working on these distributed architectures. And I can't see a better way of doing this than with something like Compass. And I am going to go to Atlassian Intelligence. I do think there is just, the possibilities are really exciting.
Yeah, it's very cool.
It is very cool.
Yes.
I don't think we can get away from AI. We have so much to figure out, completely agree with you there. So maybe not in the next 12 to 18 months, but
after that,
definitely.
Yes, for sure.
So Compass is definitely something where we see intelligence and integrations really giving us that insight, so you can go from insight to discovery to action, ultimately leading to developer
And
joy.
one thing I forgot, a lot of more self-service capabilities there. So you shouldn't go to any infrastructure person anymore, everything self-serviced from a developer experience portal or any other portal. Not giving you only your application landing zone, but also configuration of your DevOps platform, your DevOps tools, your developer machines, everything already set up for your team to start working immediately.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I see also happening at this moment. I do have a lot of discussions already with, let's say, the little bit more mature enterprises, which already adopted Agile or went to the DevOps way already. They are thinking, okay, this developer experience is definitely the next step which you need to tackle. But there are also organizations which are far behind. But it's top of mind with many people at this moment.
Yeah, I love that. Like all the things that you mentioned are really about helping teams navigate that complexity, right? Like the AI, the templates, it's really abstracting that complexity into a platform to help teams deliver high-quality software fast.
Yeah.
Which number was yellow?
Sorry?
Which number on your memory game was yellow?
Yellow?
Yeah?
Oh, I can't remember.
8.
Nice one. All right, I want to thank you both for joining. It's been a privilege to have you both with us to have this discussion. And thank you all for joining the session. I hope you enjoyed it.